In 1960, Britain was a different world. Milk was delivered to your doorstep, and a brand new car cost less than most rent today. Life moved slower, but every penny stretched further. What you earned, what you owned, and what you dreamed of were all tied to price tags. These weren't just numbers, they told the story of a generation. Let's rewind to the real cost of everyday life. In 1960, a gallon of petrol cost 4 shillings and 8 pence, barely enough to worry about. Driving was still a growing habit, not a financial strain. Families could afford spontaneous day trips to the coast, scenic drives through the countryside, and even weekly errands without thinking twice about fuel. The cost of mobility was low, and that gave ordinary people a taste of freedom that once only the upper class had known. Most cars were compact, practical, and British-made. There were no digital dashboards or fuel economy screens, just simple engines, winding roads, and a growing culture of exploration. Petrol stations were personal, full-service spots where someone pumped your fuel with a smile. The smell of petrol was part of the era, a familiar presence on hands, in garages, and on every journey. A pint of beer in 1960 cost 1 shilling and 10 pence. That small amount bought more than drink. It bought time, comfort, and a shared pause in the day. Pubs were places of rhythm, where regulars knew your order and the landlord knew your name. After a day's work, the bar became the boundary between labour and leisure, and no one rushed through it. The furniture was worn, the ale was warm, and the stories were real. There were no sports TVs or playlists, just conversation, laughter, and the ambient hum of a world unplugged. A pint wasn't a transaction, it was a ritual. The act of drinking together, of slowing down with others, brought more warmth than the beer itself. At 4 shillings and 1 penny, a pack of 20 cigarettes was an everyday purchase for millions. Smoking had not yet become a health issue in the public mind. It was simply a habit, a gesture, a marker of adulthood. People smoked in buses, cinemas, offices, even hospitals, and no one flinched. It filled awkward silences and offered calm between moments of noise. Lighting a cigarette was often a social act. Matches were struck with rhythm, shared without asking. Smoke curled into conversation, settled in curtains and lingered on coats. To be a smoker in 1960 wasn't a rebellion. It was the norm. It shaped the smell of rooms, the pause in routines, and the soundtrack of life itself. Can you still smell your childhood home? A simple box of matches cost 2 pence, an item so ordinary that no one thought to question its value. Yet those tiny sticks were the start of nearly everything. Gas stoves, coal fires, candles, cigarettes, all began with a single strike. It was a small act, done dozens of times a day, that carried more importance than people realised. Matches lived in drawers, coat pockets, toolboxes, and handbag corners. Every home had a preferred brand, and every household relied on them. The flick of the match was a sound of routine, a warm crackle that signalled the start of something useful or comforting. Long before lighters or electric hobs, it was fire by friction. Milk cost 8 pence per pint and was delivered to your doorstep by sunrise. The clink of glass bottles in metal crates was part of the natural soundscape of Britain. You didn't choose a brand or queue at the supermarket. You trusted the milkman. His routine was precise, his presence almost invisible, yet his reliability was felt every morning. Children loved the foil tops, especially when the cream had risen overnight. Sometimes cats got there first, licking at the bottle before the door even opened. Milk was more than a product. It was a quiet symbol of care. In a world with fewer choices, people placed more trust in the little things that arrived without needing to be asked. The Daily Mirror cost just 2.5 pence, yet it carried the day's drama, laughter, outrage and headlines into millions of homes. It wasn't scrolled, it was unfolded. Readers absorbed the news over breakfast, clipped out articles and passed pages around the table. For working-class households, it was one of the most reliable windows to the wider world. The newspaper held a daily presence. Smudging fingers, stuffing briefcases, lining drawers. Each page had weight, from sports scores to soap operas. The paper didn't demand attention. It earned it. It lingered under teacups and next to toasters, shaping the rhythm of conversations at work and at home. A Bush television in 1960 cost 54 guineas, a major investment that came with excitement and pride. Families who bought one didn't just bring home a device, they brought home a cultural shift. Neighbours would gather, children sat in silence, and even adults were mesmerised. The arrival of a television changed the shape of the evening. The screen was small, the picture in black and white, and the channels were few. But the anticipation was real, and every programme felt like an event. It brought news, music, stories and laughter into the living room, transforming the household from a private space into a window to the world. It wasn't just entertainment, it was access, status and memory. The Bush TR-82 transistor radio cost 21 guineas, a serious purchase, but a transformative one. Before this, families gathered around heavy radios rooted to a corner of the living room. With the TR-82, sound became mobile. News could follow you into the kitchen, and music could fill the garden while you hung laundry, or read the paper in the sun. The design itself was stylish, with rounded edges and bold dials, making it feel like something from the future. You didn't just hear the world, you carried it with you. Cricket matches, jingles, wartime memories and pop songs became part of daily motion. In a quiet home, a voice on the radio could feel like company. Was there a song that changed your kitchen? The Qualcast Panther push lawn mower cost £8, 2 shillings and 9 pence, and it was in nearly every shed across Britain. It didn't need fuel or wires, just steady arms and a bit of pride. The metal cylinder blades clattered through the grass, slicing clean lines that said, "Someone here cares." It wasn't just a chore, it was part of the rhythm of the week. Sunday mornings filled with the sound of steel on blades and the scent of freshly cut grass. Neighbours waved, kids ran ahead collecting daisies, and the lawn became a badge of honour. There was satisfaction in the sweat and joy in the routine. The Hoover Junior vacuum cleaner cost £3, 17 shillings and 4 pence. A purchase discussed, saved for and cherished. It was noisy, heavy and sometimes unpredictable, but it signalled something new. It meant no more hauling rugs into the yard for a beating. It meant modernity had crept into the home. Once a week, the whole house paused for the big clean. The Hoover roared across hallways and under beds. Its presence was loud, but so was the pride in owning one. You weren't just cleaning, you were part of a future that promised less backache and more dignity in housework. The Rolls Electromatic Twin Tub washing machine cost 52 guineas and was nothing short of revolutionary. It didn't do the work for you, but it cut the time in half. With 2 separate tubs, one for wash, one for spin, it still required effort and attention. But compared to hand scrubbing collars and wringing cloth by hand, it felt like a gift. Water splashed on tiled floors, soap suds built up in corners, and the spin cycle often shook the room. Still, this machine changed lives. It freed hours, saved backs, and gave housewives one more tool in their endless daily routine. For many families, it was the first machine they ever truly trusted. The Rolls refrigomatic refrigerator cost 57 guineas, and it transformed the kitchen forever. Before that, perishables were stored in cool pantries, meat was cooked quickly, and shopping was done almost daily. Suddenly, food could last. Milk stayed fresh. Butter didn't melt. Leftovers had a home. Families began planning meals differently, buying in bulk, storing for later. It wasn't just convenience, it was freedom. The soft hum of the fridge meant stability, and children quickly learned where the coldest drinks lived. It was the beginning of refrigeration as we now know it. Quiet, constant, invisible. The Colston dishwasher cost £89, 5 shillings and 4 pence. A price most households couldn't justify, but desperately wanted to. Washing dishes by hand was the default, done after every meal, often with tired arms and quiet resignation. The idea of a machine doing it for you felt like fantasy. This wasn't common, as it was aspirational. Having a dishwasher in 1960 whispered of middle-class dreams and a life with more ease. It didn't just clean, it represented escape, especially for women shouldering the brunt of housework. And for those who had it, the quiet cycle at night felt like a small rebellion. What appliance felt like the future arriving? Light bulbs in 1960 cost between 1 shilling and 2 pence to 1 shilling and 8.5 pence. They were bought individually, chosen carefully and used sparingly. Switching on a light was an intentional act, not something taken for granted. Rooms were kept dim when not in use. People respected electricity, not out of fear, but because of its cost. Children were taught to turn off lights, and entire houses operated with a kind of silent efficiency. Even the glow from a single bulb carried weight, softening evening meals and creating quiet spaces that felt earned. The average house price in Britain was £2,235. That figure, while modest by today's standards, represented years of saving, working, and hope. A house wasn't just bricks, it was identity, pride, and future. Owning one meant you had made it, even if just barely. Mortgages were serious and furniture was added slowly, room by room. Families grew into homes, not out of them. The front door key was a symbol of independence, and garden fences were painted by hand, one weekend at a time. A house was your world, not your asset. 1960 wasn't defined by what people lacked, but by how much they valued what they had. Each price told a story, not just of currency, but of culture, rhythm, and restraint. A pint meant pause, a radio meant progress, and a gallon of petrol opened the door to freedom. These weren't just purchases. They were milestones in daily life, measured not by quantity, but meaning. Today we spend more than ever, but often feel less grounded. Looking back helps us remember when every coin counted and every object carried weight. If these memories spoke to you, subscribe for more stories that honour the everyday past. Because sometimes the smallest prices hold the biggest memories.